Good morning. You got it. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Greater Naples. My name is Tony Fisher. Very happy to be here. Greetings and blessings to all who are celebrating Passover, which began last night and which extends, I think, through next Sunday. We'll be touching on Passover a little bit briefly again next week. Today is Palm Sunday for all of Christendom, I think. Even the Eastern calendar is aligned this year. And we will honor Palm Sunday in our own Unitarian Universalist way today. So we'll see how that goes. I do have an incredible gratitude. I spend, a lot of time here, and I walk out into the garden every day, and it is just such a blessing to have that, to go out and sit and enjoy. And so I want to honor the garden crew, the Tuesday garden crew today. Anybody in the stand up if you're in the garden crew. Not only do they work hard, but they eat well, too. So if you're interested in joining that crew, Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock, show up and you'll find something to do. Or somebody will find something for you to do. I have a couple of announcements. First of all, Weekend Meals is still doing their fundraising, as you can see on the screen behind me. Weekend Meals is our wonderful program that provides food over the weekend for students in Collier County in need and their families. And we're doing fundraising right now. There's did we see the kids who were saying thank you? I don't know. We did? Oh, there they are. Okay. Anyway, the families, the children are all grateful. The school people are just very grateful for this congregation for what we do. We do a lot more than other places do, and we do it well. We're hoping to sponsor more children this year, and so please look in the mail and see what you might do for the Weekend Meals program. Today we have a Split the Plate for Grace Place. You saw some information in the newsletter and in our weekly blast, so we will be honoring Grace Place with our collection today and splitting half of that with Grace Place. After the service today, there'll be a movie sponsored by the Social Justice Committee called A Day Without a Mexican, something that might be very, very relevant to us today. Wednesday, I'm doing perhaps, but maybe not, the final World Religions workshop on Islam this week, and Perrine Winter will be joining me for that, for Q&A, so I'm excited about that. And next week, remember to bring a flower because it's Easter, end of Passover flower ceremony here at UU. So we'll look forward to that. Don't forget, bring a flower. We'll have a few just in case here. Finally, it's my joy to have Jim Reeves with us as our worship associate today. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Tony, and good morning. We are so glad you've joined us. Whether you're here in the sanctuary or watching us on Facebook Live or out in the pavilion, please know you are always welcome here. We're a welcoming congregation, freely seeking intellectual and spiritual growth. We strive to create a larger community of peace, justice, and love. Here we learn and grow together and try to live our values out in public. If you're new to our congregation, we're especially grateful you found us. Our hope is that we can make you feel welcome and find ways to help you connect. And now, take a deep breath and settle ourselves into this time of worship with the morning's prelude.
In this place of connection, we believe that every heart can burn with the light of peace and of love, even in the most difficult times. In this place of joy, we celebrate all that we have to contribute on our shared journey, whether the road be rough or smooth. In this place of curiosity, we know that there is always something to learn, even from the old stories. In this place of action, we dare to reach across divides, to build a new way, though the arc of justice seems long. In this place of power, may we realize the potential in each and all to be a light and a blessing to the world. Let's join together in our chalice lighting response. See on the screen and in your orders of service. May this flame stir our hearts and remind us of our mission to be truly welcoming, to grow in mind and spirit, and to widen the circle of peace, justice, and love. And let's rise as your will. Oh, sorry, yes. There's that. Let's rise as you're willing and able to join in our opening hymn. It sounds along the ages. Should we play this through once first, or we'll play it through once first, and then we'll begin. Number 187.
It sounds along the ages, soul answering to soul. It kindles on the pages of every Bible scroll. The psalmist heard and sang it, from martyr lips it broke, and tongues outrang it till sleeping nations woke. From Sinai's cliffs it echoed, it breathed from Buddha's tree. It charmed in Athens' market, it hallowed Galilee. The hammer stroke of Luther, the pilgrim seaside prayer, thy oracles of Concord, one holy word declare. It calls and lo, new justice, it speaks and lo, new truth. In ever nobler stature and unexhausted youth, forever on resounding and knowing not of time, our laws but catch the music of its eternal chime.
Please be seated. First reflection, looking for Jesus. I have to admit to having had a distant relationship with Jesus of Nazareth through the minister of the church where I grew up. My childhood image of that minister was of this larger-than-life figure with black hair streaked with gray, wearing a black robe, standing behind an elevated pulpit and reading from this incredibly large Bible on the lectern. He usually used Scripture to illustrate his very humanist sermons. Floyd Taylor was his name, and it turned out when I look back at photographs of him, he wasn't so big. Certainly not tall. He must have been standing on a platform, I think, behind the pulpit. But he had this big resonant bass voice when reading Scripture, and with a sort of a affected voice. It was a wonderful thing to hear. He taught through those services, or I sort of absorbed through those early services, that Jesus of Nazareth was preaching love and acceptance and action. So when it came time to begin my reading for seminary, I was eager and interested to be able to read more and to find out who this guy, Jesus, really was. What was he all about? My first major disappointment was to discover that there are no contemporary accounts of Jesus' life. None. The one account outside the gospel narratives comes from the Judean Roman historian Josephus, who was born after Jesus' birth, after Jesus' death, and didn't write about him until much, much later, perhaps the late 90s. And even that account of Jesus as a healer who was arrested and executed by Pontius Pilate is suspect as either having been derived from the gospel accounts themselves or perhaps even added later by Christian editors. When writing about Jesus, scholars talk about the pre-Easter Jesus, the Jewish healer and preacher who was active in Galilee around 30 CE. And we get glimpses of that Jesus in the Gospels. But the general assumption is that only about 20% of the New Testament contains authentic sayings and stories from Jesus of Nazareth, Yeshua ben Yosef. Accessing the lessons and sayings of that itinerant preacher, the pre-Easter Jesus, requires careful analysis of the Gospels, understanding those writers' particular goals, and then filtering out what they most likely have added to justify their particular project. Aside from what information Mark, the first writer, had, much, though not all of what is thought to be original in the Gospels, likely comes from two major sources anyway. Though not a part of the Christian Bible, the Gospel of Thomas contains a collection of the sayings of Jesus, some of which show up in the four Gospels. Its date of authorship is highly debated, but some believe that the collection has some very early roots soon after Jesus' death. Scholars are also fairly certain that there was another earlier collection of sayings and stories that they have named Q, from which Matthew and Luke derived some of their information and material. The Gospels, the good news of Jesus' mission, were written years later. And as you would anticipate from the Christian Bible, they relate a developing Christology, the idea that Jesus was the anointed one, the Messiah, which translate into Greek as the Christ. So what we have in the Gospels are second or third-hand memories, stories and sayings written down at various times and subjected to the changing ideas about Jesus after his death. The Gospels represent the post-Easter Jesus. The Gospel of Mark, thought to be the first gospel written, was penned 35 to 40 years after the crucifixion, placing it around the year 70, the time of the destruction of the second Jewish temple in Jerusalem, a time of great anxiety. Mark was writing in Greek, probably outside of Israel, and his audience was made up of Gentiles and diasporic Jews who were anxious about what was happening in Judea. He was assembling stories about Jesus and some of Jesus' sayings in narrative form, and a biography with a beginning and an ending. And the earliest manuscripts of Mark end really with a mystery, an empty tomb with hope there in the blackness. Matthew, writing about 15 years later, borrowed a lot from Mark, his history and his chronology, And his project was a lot more interesting in that he was a Jew writing within a Christian community, perhaps in Galilee or southern Syria, who wanted to present the long lineage of Jesus and include in his story some of the prophecies about the Messiah. He wrote his narrative to be sure that the critical Jewish heritage wasn't lost within this new movement that was separating itself from the Jews of Israel. Luke, a historian, was writing mostly to Gentiles in an early Christian community outside of Judea. He was trying to create a wider audience for Jesus, not as someone who filled Jewish prophecy necessarily, but as someone who created a world vision of peace and justice and love into which everyone was invited and where the differences between Jew and Gentile would be irrelevant at some point. And John, the last of the Gospels, the one that doesn't really share any of the chronologies of the first three, was writing at the very, very end of the first century from a Christian community that was experiencing isolation from both Jewish culture and from the expanding Roman culture. John was writing to build on the Christology that had been developing through the earlier Gospels, emphasizing the divinity of Jesus with language that clearly identified Jesus as the Son of God. There's lots of I am language in John. I am the way, the truth, the light. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. I am the light of the world. John also built upon the idea of belief as being crucial. If you believe strongly enough, you might join Jesus in heaven. John, like Paul, who was writing a half a century earlier, was writing to prepare his readers for Jesus' return, fully believing that that return was imminent. And going back to Paul, who wrote probably in the late 40s through perhaps the 60s, his letters were to small Gentile communities of Jesus followers in Asia Minor and Greece and Rome. These were a collection of instructions and pleas to those followers to align themselves more clearly with what Paul saw as Jesus' teaching. He, too, was trying to prepare them for the return of Jesus in this world and for a judgment day. All these writers had their stories. They had their projects, each interpreting and changing and shifting the language to meet their needs, to fit their place and their time and their ideas of where this movement was headed. And so it has been since those very early times. People, communities, nations projecting onto Jesus what they wanted to extract. Let's join in singing our centering hymn, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. Number 34 in the gray hymnal. The words will be on the screen. These words are taken from 1 Corinthians 13, verses 1 through 3.
Though I may speak with bravest fire and have the gift to all inspire, and have not love, my words are vain as sounding brass and hopeless gain. Though I may give all I possess, and striving so my love profess, but not be given by love within, the prophet soon turns strangely thin. Come, Spirit, come, our hearts control, our spirits long to be made whole. Let inward love guide every deed, by this we work and are freed.
We come together in this moment, in this service, to share with one another, to be together in community, honoring those joys and sorrows that each of us have in our lives all the time. If you have a specific joy or sorrow that is you're feeling specifically today, please raise your hand. I'll bring you the microphone. I'll state your name and briefly what's in your heart, joys and sorrows.
Hi, my name is Lori Osment, and I'm so grateful this morning. I spent last week at a dragon boat camp paddling with a boat full of breast cancer survivors. And there's so much that goes along with that. Love, acceptance, inspiration, all of the things. And I was so sad to leave until I got here this morning. And I thought, this is the dragon boat. This is keeping us lifted on top of the water. This is moving us forward. This is all the things. So, thank you.
Thank you.
That was really beautiful. Thank you. Daryl Manning. I just wanted to mention that last night we attended a Seder with our friends who were very gracious to invite us. And it was really a nice time with people we knew and people we didn't know. But we all came away as great friends. The host had written the Haggadah himself, and he included prayers and poems that were really appropriate for what's happening in the world today. So, happy Passover to everyone.
I am Lillian Goss, and I have a great joy. My only son, Vic Valchak, is here today from snowy and cold Pennsylvania. Vic is a ACLU legal director of ACLU of State of Pennsylvania. Get out. And you have no idea how many lawsuits they file daily to the government, against the government for people's liberty and justices. Vic literally works night and day. Welcome here, Vic. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Lillian. It's good for you to be here.
My name is Dina Sewell, and this last year I've been involved with the Weekend Meals for Kids. But you know, that's not going to happen unless we all dig deep. There are kids in this community that are hungry. They're hungry every day. I know. I don't know what that's like. I've had a very privileged life. But I urge you, please, please, let us keep up our, I think it's 174 kids. So far, we support every week. But at this point, I think we're up to 120 or 130. $325 will feed a kid for a year.
Thanks, Dina.
I'm Eleanor Richardson, and I'm just thinking of my neighbor, my next-door neighbor who lives alone and has broken her ankle in 2 places. She was leaving a theater, and the woman behind her fell down the stairs and landed on her. And so I not only hold my neighbor in my thoughts, but the woman who fell on her, who feels really awful.
Good morning. My name is Vincent Keys. I'm here in celebration of my wife, who is having her birthday today, but she's also with her sister, who is a cancer survivor now. So thank you.
Thank you. So happy birthday to Diane over there on the East Coast. Marie. Yeah.
My name is Maria Beebe. I thought Ligaya would say something about this joy, but where is she?
Teaching.
Anyway, so I will share the joy. Her husband, Steve, has been named one of the impact teachers at Bonita Beach Elementary School or middle school.
Awesome.
So I'm happy about that.
Great.
I take pride.
Ligaya is teaching OWL right now.
Hi, I'm Kathy Schneider, and my joy is that my daughter and son-in-law and granddaughter are here for the week, enjoying the warmth, because New York was 37 when they left yesterday, so they're happy to be here.
Wonderful. Welcome, welcome. Grateful for those joys that have been spoken and sorrows, and aware of all the joys and sorrows that reside in this room. Let's hold each other close in community and join in together in the spirit of meditation. Spirit of life and love, as mortals we hold a vision of life fulfilled and whole, though we often know that we fall short of that vision. We are indeed frail beings, bound to history and place, flesh and soil. We come together to continue our struggle to be whole, to reaffirm our own commitments, and bring to mind those people who have made our lives possible. Parents and grandparents, all the generations before, our loved ones, friends, and relatives who have been closest to us and who played such an important part in our own formation. Our teachers and role models who continue to blaze the trail for us. May we be grateful for all those who live within us and around us. And may we give substance to our gratitude by resolving to make good the use of their abundant gifts. We think of the champions of faith and freedom who have changed the world. Diverse women and men from all walks of life who have inspired us with their stories and with their deeply held passions. People willing to lay everything on the line in the pursuit of their values and their dreams. At the end of the Last Supper, Jesus said to his disciples, "I give you a new commandment, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you should also love one another." Understanding that this depth of love requires its own sacrifices. May we all know it is the pathway to that fulfilled and whole life. Let's join together in silence.
This first reading comes from the Gospel Q, the original sayings of Jesus. It's a collection of stories and sayings that appear in Matthew and Luke, but did not appear in Mark. It is believed by scholars that the writers of Matthew and Luke had access to a codex of sayings from Jesus that Mark did not have. They call this collection Q from the German word Quell, or source. No copy of Q has ever been found, but scholars have put together this collection as being material most likely to have been authentic to Jesus of Nazareth. Here is how they translated the beginning of the Sermon of the Mount. Around this time, Jesus went to the hills seeking solitude and spent the entire night in prayer. At daybreak, he came down with his disciples. A great crowd of people from all parts of Judea, Jerusalem, and the coastal region of Tyre and Sidon had come to hear him and to be cured of their diseases. Fixing his eyes on his disciples, he began to speak. Fortune are you who are poor, for yours is the realm of God. Happy to you who are hungry, for now you shall be satisfied. Fortunate are those who weep, for now you shall laugh. Fortunate are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. Happy are the merciful, for they shall now show mercy. Happy are the pure of heart, for they shall see the face of God. Fortunate are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the sons of God. Fortunate are you when people hate you, exclude you, and abuse you, and denounce you on my account. Celebrate when that day comes and dance for joy. Your reward will be great in heaven. Remember that their ancestors treated the prophets this way. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who treat you badly. Treat people as you would like them to treat you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do the same. If you do good to only those who do good to you, what merit is there in that? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you hope to receive, what reward is there in that? Even sinners lend to sinners. Instead, love your enemies and do good, expecting nothing in return. You will have great reward, and you will be children of the Father in heaven.
The great American, I'm very loud. The great American theologian, educator, and civil rights leader Howard Thurman tells the story of reading the Bible to his grandmother when he was growing up. She had been a slave and never learned to read particularly well, but she loved to listen to the Gospels. Thurman tells of how his grandmother never wanted him to read from Paul, and he was always curious about that. But as a young boy, he never questioned. Much later, when he visited his grandmother on a break from college, he finally asked her why she didn't want to hear the words of the apostle. She told him that on the plantation, the master would bring in a white pastor to preach to the slaves, and he would always preach from Paul with the message that it was good to accept your role and your conditions, the suffering and the sacrifice for the sake of Christ who had suffered on the cross. It's very little different from the message women have received throughout history of Christianity and have mostly rejected, and rightly so. Empire always tries to bend the message to suit their needs. Howard Thurman wrote about Jesus and the disinherited, and how Jesus speaks to people on the margins from all walks of life who have their backs up against the wall, who have very little opportunity to move and change. He writes about a Jesus through his preaching and stories that offers an alternative vision for those who suffer, to those who are oppressed. It is not an outright expression of violence. It is not accommodation. It is a sense of inner strength, of understanding through Jesus what's important and what's true within, and living those understandings, those values. It's a message that has been expressed in other places and other times as well. It was wonderfully expressed by the Jewish neurologist and psychologist Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps, by understanding himself. He wrote, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Everything can be taken from us except for one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given circumstances, to choose one's own way." The Gospel of Thomas has a saying in which Jesus states that the kingdom of heaven is inside you and outside you, which challenges the idea that the kingdom is something external or distant. It suggests that the true understanding and experience of Jesus and his vision comes from recognizing it within oneself and manifesting that out into the world.
In the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, in the morning when I rise, give me Jesus, give me Jesus, give me Jesus. You may have all this world. Give me Jesus. Dark midnight was my cry. Dark midnight was my cry. Dark midnight was my cry. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. You may have all of this world. Give me comes to die. Oh, when I comes to die, give me Jesus. Give me Jesus. Nobody but Jesus. You may have all of this world. Give me Jesus. Nobody but Jesus. Oh, you may have all of this world. Give me Jesus.
Religion and politics have never made good partners. We see this in the Persian Gulf and countries that have merged their politics in the Islamic faith. The harsh way they treat those that don't fall in line. Anytime we fuse our faith and our politics in an unhealthy way, we tend to relate to those who don't believe as we think they should in harmful and hurtful ways. It's like what happens when you mix manure and ice cream. The nature of the manure really isn't affected by the presence of the ice cream, but the appeal of the ice cream really takes a major hit. When we blend our religion and politics, we typically try to implement a particular cultural ideology by force. And we tend to become authoritarian, dictatorial, and oppressive in how we relate to those who aren't on the same wavelength as us. Folks who differ become enemies, a constituency that is to be put down, a faction that is to be subdued. And when that's the case, we can't express the love, acceptance, dignity, and respect that God calls on those of us who avow the name of Jesus to demonstrate. We end up tainting his reputation and tarnishing his name.
I bet you never thought you'd heard, "Give me Jesus" in this sanctuary. Today is Palm Sunday, the day that marks in the Christian calendar that day where Jesus enters the city of Jerusalem on a donkey or a colt, or both, depending on how literally you read the Gospels. But the men and women who traveled the road to Jerusalem with Jesus of Nazareth were far from uniform in their understanding about what was going to happen, though he had told them many times. They were not uniform in their understanding of his teaching, or in their expectations of where he was leading them. He was an enigmatic leader. As you read the broad scope of the gospel narratives, it's easy to see how Jesus was sowing seeds for reflection through his parables. Even when his followers were confused by a parable's meaning and asked Jesus to clarify, he would often respond with yet another parable, many of which involve planting or harvesting or management of land or flocks, a context in which his listeners were so familiar And he dropped those stories like seeds to germinate and possibly grow into a new awareness of what might change in their lives and ultimately in the world. He wanted them to think for themselves, to reflect. He was encouraging a deeper way of being. There were groups and subgroups among his followers. Like the gospel writers later, they were interpreting this person's teachings through their own lenses. Some saw him as the next great prophet in the line of long Jewish prophets. A nation's conscience would call the people of Israel, and especially their leaders, to task for veering from the values that they held dear. Others carried a hope that Jesus, as a true descendant of David, would follow his destiny and become king, bringing the Jewish people together in a popular uprising to throw off the Roman-backed government with its unwelcome cultural and religious influences. Still others were anticipating something truly cosmic, nothing less than the fulfillment of the prophecies, resulting in a total upheaval of the world and the glorious beginning of the kingdom of heaven on earth. While his followers wanted Jesus to be a doorway or a window into other possibilities or realms, Jesus was trying to be a mirror to show the people who they were and who they could become. Unfortunately, what Jesus was teaching has been obscured by the trappings of the church that grew up around those different versions of the story, and they've been twisted by empire, who always needs a vehicle for manipulating the masses. Much of the support for what's happening in our country today comes from those who firmly believe that the American nation is defined by Christianity and that the government should take active steps to keep it that way. The Christian nationalist movement asserts that America is and must remain a Christian nation, not merely as an observation about American history, but as a prescriptive program for what America must continue to be in the future. Scholars like Samuel Huntington have made similar arguments that America is defined by its Anglo-Protestant past and that we will lose our identity and our freedom if we do not preserve our cultural inheritance. Author Stephen Wolfe, writing in defense of Christian nationalism, says that the movement is a totality of national action consisting of civic laws and social customs conducted by a Christian nation as a Christian nation in order to procure for itself both earthly and heavenly good in Christ. But somewhere along the way, Jesus has been lost and forgotten. Where is the Jesus who criticized the Sadducees, the scribes and priests in the Jerusalem, because they were focused on the law and not the spirit of the law, and because they were comfortable and they weren't willing to give up on that comfort, though there was much wrong in the world? Woe to you, he said, for neglecting justice and mercy and faith, and especially those in need. The kingdom of heaven is not with you in there with your narrow lives. Get out of your comfort zones. Let go of those material things and live your faith. Where is the Jesus of the love ethic, who included in his ministry a diverse group living on the margins of society? The truth is that the teachings of the carpenter's son were never meant to be easy. The Gospels show that many walked away shaking their heads because of what he asked was too difficult. What is also true is that those in any faith who brandish their conviction as a sword have never, ever understood their own traditions.
Now it is time for us to express our gratitude for this community, its work, its vision, and all the ways in which it nourishes our lives. From its welcoming doors and sheltering walls to its good and generous people, from the sanctuary of its memorial garden to the outreach to the greater community. For all those things that, and the way that they work its magic in your life, this morning's offering will be an ongoing mission of this congregation will be greatly received. Please consider making a contribution today. You can write a check and send it to the address on your screen. You can find more information about the congregation at www.uunaples.org. And again, as a reminder, today is Split the Plate, a little bit about Grace Place for families and children. It provides pathways for out of poverty and education for children and families. Grace Place serves more than 1,300 students from infants to grandparents. Our own weekend meals serves 2 schools in the Golden Gate area.
Unitarian Theodore Parker, writing in the middle of the 19th century, penned a sermon titled "The Transient and Permanent in Christianity." He too was looking to find the pre-Easter Jesus, working to peel back much of what had been added in 2,000 years. And ultimately, he saw the bedrock of the Christian message as being loving God, loving your neighbor as yourself. And from these things alone, we can derive a pure morality. My relationship with Jesus changes and will continue to change. Like Parker, I see the essence of what Jesus was teaching and hope that I might live into that inner strength of spirit and courage of conviction that will shift me out of my own comfort zones to move forward. And I also still love the stories I heard so long ago that remind me to think, feel, and act. Jesus had a poetic vision that he called the kingdom of heaven that was inside of us and outside of us. He was trying to show people there was another way to go about life than the way empire constructs it. His message was about possibility, but he always cautioned about people thinking the path was easy. Love is simple, but it's not easy. Let's rise in body or spirit and sing our closing hymn, "The Leaf Unfurling," a little bit of spring at the end of the sermon, the resurrection of life.
The leaf unfurling in the April air, the newborn child, the loving parent's care, these constant calm and miracles we share. Hallelujah, hallelujah. The life is one, a single branching tree, all pain a part of human misery, all happiness a gift to you and me. Hallelujah, hallelujah. The self-same bells for joy and sorrow ring. No one can know what the next hour bring. We cry, we laugh, we mourn, and still we sing. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
The benediction I often use, written by Gary Smith, comes to us from Paul's letter to the Thessalonians, adapted. Go out into the world in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good, return to no person evil for evil, strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering, honor all beings. Let your light shine. Have a wonderful day.